Welcome back to Game Warp. I'm Kim, and joined with me as always is my co-host and partner in crime, Elwood Jones. How's it going, Elwood?
It's going well.
Today we have a special guest, and they're from Hyroglyphik Games. Hyroglyphik Games is a Montreal-based game developer who has released a mobile game called Zohm and a tabletop card game called Kalypto. So let's welcome Socrates and Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, what's up?
It's good. So let's start with the basics. How did you guys get into game development?
Oh, that's a fun story. We actually had no clue what the hell we wanted to do. So I remember I wanted to be a musician, and Chris had no clue. And so I asked him. I was trying to help him figuring out, and he really wanted to do stuff. He had all this energy and no clue what to do with it. And so I asked him, what are you good at? And he said, well, I don't know. All I ever did in my life was play games. And so then I told him, so then why don't we make a game? And so it was kind of because I selfishly wanted to make music for the game. and so it kind of started, and I didn't think much of it after that, but Chris really started working hard, and he started coming up with concepts for games. And so he came up with this one concept that he worked extremely hard on, and he had fleshed it out all the way. And because he had so much energy about it, I decided, you know what, I really want to help him finish this. But we had no experience. Neither of us knew how to program. The only thing we had in our lives relative to game design was the fact that we both played games and the fact that I could make music. And so we tried to find a programmer. That never fell through. That always fell through. So it came to a point where I decided, all right, you know what, I'll be the programmer. In the meantime, and the meantime kind of never ended.
Okay. So, obviously I have to ask, if you've obviously entered into this project with no previous background within programming. So, how do you really go about learning to program, especially for a full game? It's one thing to do a small little project or just a little test piece, but to start from having no background in programming to go straight into a full game. How did you really go about doing that?
Well, you really have to not give up. It's really difficult at first because it hurts your brain.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there and you're trying to learn this stuff, and it's definitely not easy. And I remember I wasn't good for the first 2 or 3 years, and I remember walking around just thinking about my programming problems, and it really it's all about visualization and being able to understand what you're trying to think about. And the more you can visually understand what you're trying to program, the easier it becomes. And then over time you start to talk to other programmers, and then you learn their tips and tricks. And over time it's really about making a commitment and sticking with that commitment over a long period.
Okay.
Now we also definitely got a lot of help from our friends YouTube and Google. If it wasn't for them, we definitely would not have been able to get all the info that we needed to get to the level we are at now. And that's not just in terms of programming, that's in terms of programming, game design itself, learning a lot of different art techniques and how to use different programs to achieve the effects we want. And then also we recently joined the independent video game program in Dawson College, which has definitely helped us learn a lot of the business aspects, a lot of programming as well, design, and that's definitely been incremental to our growth.
So is it only just the two of you working at the Hyroglyphik Games right now?
Yep.
Okay. So how long did it take you to make Zohm?
Zohm? Well, it took us about 9 months, but the main issue there was that, as we had said before, we really didn't know what we were doing at first. So we went through a 6-month development cycle, and then at the end of that 6 months, we kind of had the whole game finished, but there was unfixable bugs. And so at that point, I kind of got discouraged, and I was I really can't finish this anymore. And the fact that the project was never finishing made me feel as though it was unfinishable. So what I did was I kind of cut it off, and I said, you know what, it's going to be faster to even just reprogram this from scratch. So I reprogrammed it from scratch in about 3 months.
Okay. And because it's obviously just the two of you, I mean, was that sort of fundamental in you aiming to make a game for the mobile market than perhaps like one of the other platforms available for gaming?
Well, we definitely wanted to do something with a very, very small scope. There's something we learned very quickly, and that's that everybody overscopes, and everyone's always trying to make too large of a project for their skill level. And since we knew that we were just beginning, we tried to come up with as few mechanics as possible and try to create as much depth and fun from those mechanics. So at the start, we actually made about 20 different small systems that were all really, really simple, and we showed them to a lot of people. And Zohm ended up being the most fun to people. They just were engaged with it instantly. So that's really where we started.
Okay, so since we're already talking about Zohm, can you maybe talk a little about what Zohm is? Like, what is the game? What is the background? How did you come up with this idea?
Okay, so well, as Chris has said before, we're not really partial to any ideas. In a sense, we don't come up with one idea and then that's the one we're going to do. We really come up with as many ideas as we can, and then we see which one really resonates with people the most. And so we came up with about 20 ideas, and that's the one that the public really was like, oh yeah, this really kind of means something to us. And
at the beginning, there was no theme or anything like that. We just handed it to people, and we had a few people tell us, you know what, this kind of makes me feel like I'm meditating. For some reason, I feel strangely zen while I'm playing this. So then we said, okay, why don't we make the theme about meditation? And that's when we made the link that when you're meditating or when you're really thinking about something and you're having any forms of negative thoughts or emotions, you can't really get rid of them yourself. You sort of just have to wait till they come in your mind and leave your mind on their own. And so we found that it was kind of representative of jumping over and hopping over, sort of dancing around your negative thoughts and emotions until they leave by themselves. And that's when we decided to flesh that out a bit more. And people seemed to like that as well, so then we took it to the next step and made the whole 100 levels with the whole spectrum of emotions.
Okay. So, I mean, when you originally creating this game, it wasn't about creating a game about meditation. That was something that evolved out of the process of building the game. Is that correct?
Exactly. We tend to like games or things that have a deeper meaning. So just in general for our games, we feel like they're always going to sort of deviate towards having a deeper meaning to it.
Yeah, we generally start from a very kind of low level perspective, what are the mechanics, and then we kind of move forward from there and think what does this make me feel, or what does this make us feel, or what does this make people feel, and then we kind of try to build the emotions out of that.
Yeah, I mean, we have to say this is actually the first game that we've certainly encountered that is based around the idea of a game being used for meditation. Normally when we encounter, especially with the independent games, it's normally built around a graphical trick or a sort of gimmick that they hang the game off. So I have to say this is the first time I've actually seen gaming and meditation combined together. So this is certainly a very unique selling point for the game, and the visual style of the game as well is very unique as well. I've been certainly going back and forth with Kim, and obviously just seeing Kim play the game especially, because she's been streaming a lot for me, and it's sort of it's kind of trippy to watch, and when you play it kind of makes sense at the same time. So it's been weird having those two different experiences with the game.
Yeah, especially when the game is trying to make me feel like I'm delusional. That level killed me. Okay. Yeah. So for Zohm, is there a target audience that you were looking for, or was it just an experimental thing that you just wanted to release because of just the process?
Well, we don't necessarily believe in target market that much. We definitely think about who would be buying it or who would be playing it. But for us, it's really more about being true to the actual game itself. So we felt as though this would have to be a difficult game. And maybe that kind of goes against the target market for meditational games, because I feel like most of the time when people play something that wants to be meditative, they kind of want something that's easier and more calm, but we just didn't feel as though that was our experience with meditation.
And do you have a background in meditation or sort of new age sort of thinking at all, or is this just something you develop in?
Yeah, we just like it.
We've sat down, we've meditated a few times, but we definitely don't do it regularly. And we also believe that meditation is not just you sitting down and crossing your legs, closing your eyes. You can walk around and have meditative thoughts and just sort of let everything simmer in your brain, and it just feels like meditation to us.
Well, I mean, meditation is, I've frequently found, is the idea of you focusing the front part of your mind on one sort of menial task, and it frees the rest of your mind up to concentrate on other things. Certainly from my own personal experience of meditation, so I've never actually found meditation through, as you said, sitting on the floor and doing the traditional sort of yoga sort of meditation. It's always been through doing what many people would consider to be very menial things that I found that sort of meditation stance. So again, it's weird that you've managed to somehow tap into that with this game. I mean, just speaking of the game, really, I mean, how would you describe the game for someone who's obviously not seen the game? How would you describe how it works exactly, and what the particular features of this game are?
So basically, you imagine your phone in front of you, and anywhere that you touch on the screen, the ball that you control, your avatar, your soul as we call it in the game, will teleport to that location. And you can also drag your finger nice and smoothly around the screen and it'll follow your finger anywhere it goes. And basically, lines will come in from either the top, the bottom, the left, or the right, and you basically gotta jump over them and teleport without them letting them touch you. If they touch you, then you lose, and you pretty much gotta restart the level. So you basically do this as little diamonds pop up. We call them the riches of your mind. And once you've collected 8 riches of your mind, you reach inner peace, as we call it, and a star shows up. You get the star, and it explodes all the negative thoughts and emotions away, and you get to proceed to the next.
Kim, how's your search for inner peace going playing this game?
There has been some rage moments, but I'm okay. In general, I'm doing much better. I'm about halfway through the levels right now. So it's going good. I'm finding that rather addictive at times. So it's definitely getting in a little bit of the way of me completing things I need to do, since me and Elwood are crazy people with 1,000 projects. But you know what's also very interesting is that you guys also have a tabletop card game. And I always wonder how someone comes up with a tabletop card game, especially with a market now they're bustling with it. I mean, how is this something that you enjoy doing yourself, and it's an idea that you had, or?
Well, that was it kind of came out of the fact that we couldn't program it first. Mm-hmm. So the thing about us is that we're very we don't like sitting still. It really annoys us to have the notion that we can't do something. So whenever we have an obstacle, we do our best to find a way around it and to do something right now that could contribute to something that will be done later. So we wanted to make video games, but we couldn't program, so we started with, actually kind of by accident, I have a friend who's in business, and I wanted to make a game that would kind of be a little tongue-in-cheek game to kind of, joke with him about business. So the game was called Executives. And it was all about like hiring and firing like people and stuff like that. And it kind of just came out really, really naturally over, one day. And I showed Chris, and Chris really liked it. And so he started playing with a bunch of people, and he was like, man, people really like Executives. And so we talked about it, and we're like, this would actually be a good idea, because we can't program, to kind of go through, one development cycle and try and do this, tabletop thing.
And then over the course of about 2 weeks, we slowly changed a few of the mechanics, added some things in, removed some of the stuff that weren't really core to the gameplay itself, and finally we had Kalypto, which is we found was a pretty tight experience. Then we were like, all right, so what's the next step for us now if we wanted to release this thing? And so we looked into shipping costs and found someone to do the art for us, and then just took it all the way, got a sample from the production company, started to show people, and people liked it, so we thought we had something, and we went for it all in. And then we realized it's definitely really hard to make a card game if you don't have a distributor or a producer.
So since now you have more programming skills, and and you're kind of like learning more, are you planning to make Kalypto into a video game?
Well, we've thought about it. We're thinking that in order for Kalypto to succeed properly, we really need to go over and maybe change the artwork or change the theme of the game, because it kind of scares people away. Like most people like Kalypto once they play it, but at first they feel it's very it looks like it might be Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that, so it kind of deters them from actually wanting to play.
Well, obviously with the Magic the Gathering Yu-Gi-Oh, when you look at those sort of cards and there's so much information on them, it can be a bit complex. And plus, they've also got the social stigma attached to them. So, I mean, how are you actually finding the actual market for both the independent gaming side as well as the card gaming, the sort of tabletop gaming side? I mean, do you find that it's a much more competitive sort of environment than it would have been in previous years, or is there a place really for everyone to really sort of find their voice really within the market?
I would say that in terms of finding your voice in the market, it's a lot easier if you're going to go for something that's digital, because you have a much easier distribution channel as opposed to a physical card game in which the distribution is really not as simple. We sell our card game for $10, and we were planning on, because we know some people outside of Montreal, outside of Canada, want decks of Kalypto, but for us to ship it there would cost more than the deck itself. So it's kind of impossible for us to even to do that shipping. So with a digital game, it's super easy. You can just put it on the App Store, and then anybody anywhere in the world can buy it.
So you would say that with your plans going forward, that you'd probably be aiming to do more work within the digital realm rather than doing like physical games. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, for sure.
For now, we definitely like physical games. It's we made a lot of card games during our little phase where we were making tabletop games.
Yeah.
And we love it. We wanted to be the guys that had that bin with just like a ton of $5 card games, all different cool stuff that you can play, really fast, interactive stuff. But it turns out it's just way too hard for us to do now. But we definitely would like to revisit it again in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, obviously, if you haven't got someone to distribute your games, it does really sort of eat into your funds, really, trying to ship them out to everyone. Certainly the postal service doesn't get any cheaper, especially speaking from the UK side of things. So I can understand the desire to obviously go into digital gaming. But I mean, what would you say has suddenly sparked this sort of boom in tabletop gaming again? It seems like such a retro thing to come back. Yet it seems to now be coming back, and it's really stronger than ever. And it's, as I say, it's not just popular established board games. We've got all sorts of unique and interesting card games, especially when you look at things such as like Exploding Kittens, Cards Dream Mountain. There seems to be no rhyme, no reason to what sort of games are popular. It's just all sorts of different games are popular. I just wonder if you had any sort of theories on why tabletop gaming in particular has sort of come back as strong as it has.
Well, I think an interesting aspect of games today, especially newer games, is that they're kind of getting rid of this whole, two players on one console kind of experience. From what I've noticed a lot recently is that, like, you can't really play, let's say, Call of Duty with two people in the same room. And I feel like that's kind of what people want sometimes, is they want to play a game with people in the same room. They want to see the faces of the people that they're playing with. And I feel like tabletop gaming really allows people to do that. The other thing that I feel is that, like, tabletop games of old, like Monopoly, Risk, whatever else, they're very kind of outdated, I would say. And, like, game design has evolved a lot since they were created. And so I think that it's only natural for board games to kind of modernize and become like current with the knowledge that has been developed over time since old board games were created. Okay,
so you'd say it's more just developers moving with the times, which has helped to increase the popularity rather than just sort of changing atmosphere really and people's tastes.
Well, yeah. I also believe that people are more busy nowadays and they kind of want more connection, and it gives people a good excuse to get together and just have like a nice night all together, several people, and really engage in something instead of all sitting in separate houses at home and just talking over a microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, party games are definitely one of those things that are becoming a big trend. I mean, I know that for myself, I mean, even just talk about the holidays. Every single holiday, me and my friends get together and we try out some new board games or card games. And card games also have that flexibility of being very portable. You're not bringing a big box of like whatever, a gigantic piece of cardboard that you need to carry around, and I mean, there are just so many on the market. It's like Exploding Kittens was the first one. We actually played that this holiday. That's why I laughed when Elwood said it right away. I think that for any card games, talking about it is really hard because it's really in the experience, and like as you play it, you really learn the game. But still, how about you talk a little about Kalypto and maybe the story behind it, and like just the story of the game and like how it works in generally. I know that there's a lot of rules and stuff, so.
Yeah.
So basically, Kalypto is a game in which you're trying to balance resources. So in your hand, you are dealt a hand of 7 cards that are a mix of animals, which we call shadows, and powers, which will allow you to sort of manipulate the shadows that will be going on the table. At the start of the game, everyone takes any amount of these animals, shadows that they want, and they put them face down in front of them. So it's a bit of a memory game, and what's nice about it is that you're not allowed to look at what you put down again. So you have to remember your own things as well, or else you could, screw up a little bit and end up suiciding yourself. Then after that, you're sort of taking turns trying to figure out what the other guys got hidden by attacking him with maybe smaller shadows that are weaker, and using powers to steal cards from the other person's hand, steal cards from the other person's board, and draw cards until you get to the end of the deck when there's no resources left and you basically have to fight to the death with everything that you've collected all game. What's really nice about this is that you have to balance the cards you've got down on the table and the cards you have in your hand. There are 5 different ways to lose, and you really always have to keep on your toes, because if you don't, then someone's going to force you to lose, either by forcing you to draw too many cards into your hand, getting you down to 0 cards in your hand, getting you down to 0 cards on the table, or forcing you to draw too many more cards than are left in the deck. So it's really like a game about remembering what's been played and what's left in the deck so that you can outsmart your opponent and get him in that little final hour. And when the deck's done, you really have to squander with fight with the resources the minimum resources you have left.
So it's pretty much a game of memory and strategy combined together.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so
it ruins relationships sometimes.
as most games would. So on average, how long does a match of Kalypto last?
Anywhere between 5 and 20 minutes.
Good.
So we went for like a really fast-paced, replayable game. 20 minutes is like the super long game. If you're playing, because you can play Kalypto from 2 to 4 players with a single deck, and if you add more cards in with a second deck, you can play with more players. But really, the best amount of players to play with is between 2 and 4. So if you're playing 2 people, a game can be really, really quick. 5 minutes, 10 minutes if it really gets down to the nitty-gritty last cards, and then 20 minutes if you're playing with 4 people.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see more shorter games. I know that certainly whenever you have people say, "Oh, we're going to sit down and play a game," there's always this like fear that it's going to be like Monopoly and just go on for hours and hours on end. And so I really always appreciate it when games are kind of short and you have quick rounds such as. And I think that's another reason I tend to gravitate towards the card games, that they tend to have these quick sort of 20-minute rounds, and it's easy to pick up and put down. And as Kim said, there's not like the huge amount of bits and pieces you have to transport over. You can just sort of pick it up and put it down in your bag or whatnot. So yeah.
There's nothing more like what we call ruining the mood than having long rules and a long setup, and then having to leave halfway through the game, or one person leaves, and just takes away a lot of the fun that nice quick games have.
Obviously, look into the future for the company. I mean, what projects do you have in the works, or is it just basically the case you're developing these 2 titles at the moment?
Yeah, well, we are planning to keep growing. So we have another game that we're working on right now called Frostflare, which is about who has the biggest balls. It's it's basically a game where 2 players hold the same phone from each end, and you have 3 buttons, and each button shoots like a ball. So there's fireballs, ice balls, earth balls, lightning balls, and gold balls. And so it's just a game about trying to get the ball to the other side.
So you shoot a ball, and then the other guy will shoot a ball in the same lane to cancel yours out. So fire would reach ice, and they would disappear. And then you try to you can hold the button to make a bigger ball, and then feed more balls into it to make it really big. And then it's all about just trying to balance the lanes and try to sneak past the guy and reach his side for the winning shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So
that
when
sounds.
is that planned to be released?
Very soon. Probably in like 1 month or 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
We're gonna release this one for free.
Yeah, we're gonna start testing the market a little bit and see what happens when we release for free, but with in-app purchases.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
So
it's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll have another title that we're working on, which is more of like a horror game, which is going to be something like Slenderman, but inside of your house using AR. So yeah, we're really going to try and scare you with that one.
It's gonna be more like a party game. You know, you get together with your friends, and it's kind of like hide and seek, but there's a ghost in the house, and you don't want them to let him find you. You know, if you get too close, your phone's gonna vibrate, and you're trying to go around the house and maybe find his name so that you can say the name into the phone and dispel him from the house.
Okay. I've actually heard of a similar thing, a similar game last year sometime. I can't remember the name of it, but
Night Terrors probably.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it
Maybe,
looks
yeah.
pretty good, but the difference between Night Terrors and our game is that our game is going to be multiplayer.
Okay.
It's really gonna be a party thing, you know, with not really a party thing, but more like a small get together with your friends in your house in the dark kind of thing.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty much your audience that you've now set is that you're aiming for party games and interaction amongst people.
Yeah,
I
we
guess
definitely
so.
love it.
I guess so. I guess it happened like that kind of randomly. We're not really thinking about that from like a conscious perspective.
But
Right.
I think that's a nice angle because you see games like, Jackbox and all those things becoming really popular. Like, a lot of people are kind of craving this sort of interaction now. That I guess that's why we see the card games kind of have this surge and just in general, like, people really enjoy the multiplayer and just being in the same place, being able to do that.
The thing is, we've just all got sick of randoms abusing us on the internet, so we decided to go and hang out with real people for a change, so.
I definitely feel you on that one.
I think there's only so many times you can have some 14-year-old call you grandpa, and it's like, I'm 35. So it's nice to go and hang out with people real people who aren't just going to just shout abuse at you for like 15 minutes at a time. So, well, thank you very much for obviously coming on and speaking to us today. It's been absolutely great, obviously hearing about the various projects you have, and certainly these unique ideas that you're bringing to the market, not only just obviously with the terms of bringing meditation and gaming together, but also in what you're doing with like the party card game. So it's been really interesting to see how you're tackling both virtual games as well as physical games. So we obviously wish you all the best with your projects come up, and we obviously look forward to seeing what you come up going forward. So thank you very much for coming on and discussing your games with us this evening.
Well, thank you for having us, and honestly, all the best to you guys too.
Thank you.
We have a lot of projects on our plates right now, and honestly, it just drives us more. We're just looking forward to making a lot more things and interact, because we love to see people smile. We love to have events where we can bring people together and play games, and that's really just what we're going for. We just want to give back to the community, and the whole thing's really exciting.
Okay. I just have one more question. Is are you guys planning on showing up at any other events soon, or like your company at? Because I met you guys at the Independent Games Festival, so I just.
We just recently went to MIGS.
Yeah.
We're not entirely sure what other events exist, but if we do figure out which ones they are, we'll definitely go.
We know
Okay.
a guy, and he's always saying what events there are, and as soon as he says that there is one, we generally hop on. So we definitely would love to go to more events. Or
Montreal Comic Con is always one.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and DreamHack.
Oh,
Those are just
yeah.
a few that I know off the top of my head, which I will definitely be going. So.
Might see it.
Yeah. So thank you again. This wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read our game reviews. To get gaming news and releases every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. And hang out with us over at twitch.tv/Game Warp Podcast to watch our streams. To listen to us on the go, you can find us on iTunes and Podomatic. Thank you. See you in the next episode.